Welcome to another edition of Border Report Live, the show that delves deep into border issues affecting the South Texas, the West Texas, the Southern California border region with Mexico. My name is Sandra Sanchez. I'm the South Texas correspondent, and I'm coming to you today live from our KVEO studios in Harlingen, Texas, deep in South Texas on the border. In a bit, I'm going to have a conversation with an executive talking about how ICE raids are affecting the construction industry and the financial impact it's having on South Texas. But first, we're going to have a couple headlines to bring to you. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press just yesterday reveals that the agency allows immigration officers to forcibly enter homes to make arrests without a judicial warrant. This change reverses previous guidance and raises concerns about constitutional protections against illegal searches. The memo signed by ICE's acting director states that administrative warrants are sufficient for forced entry if there's a final order of removal. The policy is expected to face legal challenges and criticism from advocacy groups. The Associated Press says it's obtained the memo and whistleblower complaint from an official in Congress. For years, immigrant advocates, legal and aid groups, and local governments have urged people to not open their doors to immigration agents unless they are shown a warrant signed by a judge. The ICE directive directly undercuts that advice at a time when arrests are accelerating under the administration's immigration crackdowns. The head of a local builders group in Texas says the no warrant detentions are happening at construction sites here in South Texas as well, and we'll hear from him in a few minutes. Also, an autopsy report released by the El Paso County Medical Examiner's Office shows that a Cuban man detained at Camp East, Montana, died from asphyxiation caused by neck and torso compression, with the manner of death ruled a homicide. We told you last week about the death of Geraldo Lunas Campos, a 55-year-old Cuban national. He died January 3rd after experiencing what U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement described as, quote, medical distress while in custody. Campos' death is the latest incident involving a person who died in custody. In previous cases in which an in-custody death was ruled a homicide, authorities have noted that the determination reflects a medical classification indicating death caused by the actions of another person. And on to California. An investigation is underway in Southern California following a shooting involving federal agents. Officials say DHS agents were pursuing a vehicle during a targeted immigration operation when it crashed near Compton outside Los Angeles. At some point, shots were fired, but no one was hit by gunfire. Officials say the suspect was detained. There is also no word on what led to the shooting, if the suspects were armed, and if the damage to a vehicle believed to be involved in the incident was the result of the enforcement tactic. Groups of people in the community were later heard yelling at officers as they worked the scene. And here, locally, raids on construction sites in South Texas have been taking place for months, causing home builders and other construction projects to shut down. That's why the South Texas Builders Association is trying to come up with solutions on getting construction sites up and running again. Earlier this week, they held an Immigration Enforcement and Construction Industry Impact Symposium. South Texas Congressional Leader Henry Cuellar and Monica de la Cruz both attended the event. Cuellar says something must be done to help builders.
ICE deportation of criminals, people who have final deportation orders, people that are risk to the national interest. But when they start going on work sites and start going after people that have been here for so many years, don't have a criminal record, I think that policy needs to be paused. So certainly, we listened, we saw videos, we listened testimony. We want to find solutions, and it's got to be in a bipartisan way. And I hope that we can find some solutions.
Joining us today, we have a very special guest. Paul Rodriguez is president and CEO of Valley Land Title Company, one of the largest title companies here in the Rio Grande Valley. Mr. Rodriguez, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, you are past president of the Texas Land Title Association a
Yes, ma'am.
statewide trade association that represents nearly 15,000 professionals in the land title industry. You were at Monday's meeting, the symposium organized by the South Texas Builders Association, where construction companies said 9,000 people have been deported during the Trump presidency so far. And they talked about how immigration customs enforcement raids are affecting the industry here in South Texas. So what was discussed? What did you hear? What are your concerns?
Well, actually, Sandra, this was the second event that they've had. They had a prior town hall meeting about a month ago, and a lot of the same issues were brought up. However, at this particular session, they had a lot of film, a lot of recordings documenting their concerns. And fundamentally, the point is, particularly in the home construction area, they're experiencing great difficulty in being able to complete their projects because they're not able to have access to their employees. They're having situations where literally while people are completing a job, working on a construction site, working on a home, practically out of nowhere, agents will show up. They'll start interviewing them or are actually talking to them. Maybe an interview is a polite way to say what they do. And essentially, if they can't document that they should be here, if they don't, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of paperwork they ask for, whether they ask for licenses. I don't know anyone that normally walks around with a passport with them. But in any event, they are definitely looking for people that they claim shouldn't be in the United States. And the builders are concerned because these are employees, in many cases, longtime employees, people that they've had on their sites for quite a while. They do a lot of the more difficult grunt work, for the lack of a better way to describe it. They work on roofs, they work on cement, on driveways, laying brick, etc. And they, as far as they know, are not criminals. They haven't broken any laws. They're there because they work for them and they do a good job. And the concern from the builders that they voiced was, look, these people are necessary for us to get our jobs done. And they're not criminals. People are showing up. They're being presumed to be guilty, and they're literally taken away. And what was really interesting to see on these films was they were being chased, literally run after. But I think one of the films that was really the most impactful for me was a gentleman that was completing the concrete work on a driveway, and he was literally with a spade roughing out the final touches to his job while this agent is questioning him, practically pulling on him to get off the job. And this gentleman was bound and determined to complete the work, to complete the job. And that's the kind of people that are being impacted. And so the builders are struggling. You take those kind of employees off their hands, and it's very challenging for them to complete it. And the reality is it's not just what people say, but we're seeing numbers that back that notion up.
Amazing story. So he was actually working, still laying the concrete. They're telling him, you have to go. And he is saying, well, just a minute, let me finish it and make it smooth.
Exactly.
I think that some of your comments during the symposium mentioned that financially construction loans have dropped maybe 30 to 40%. Is that correct? I mean, what are you seeing? What is the financial ripple effect that this is causing here in the Rio Grande Valley?
Well, Valley Land Title Company is based in Hidalgo County. So what we see and we track on a monthly basis are closings, activities, specifically in the real estate area. So my comments are about Hidalgo County specifically that I can address, but I hear the same sorts of stories from Cameron and Starr County. And what we saw, interestingly, was in the summer, which is usually the peak of the construction period of people going into new homes and building new homes, we started noticing an unusual drop in closings, and that's not typically the case. And as the third quarter into the fourth quarter progressed, those numbers started to drop to the point where in November, in looking at those banks in particular that do a lot of construction loans, their numbers were down 30 to 40%. And certainly I can't tell you what the dollar number is because that's specific information I don't have. But simply in terms of the number of construction projects, again, this is residential work. I'm not saying that it's not happening at commercial sites. I would think to some degree it might be, although commercial sites are handled a little bit differently in terms of how anyone can have actual access to employees there. But in any event, we saw those numbers drop. And so, as I usually do throughout the course of my day, I run into or meet, call on bankers, lenders, people in the real estate business, and they were verifying that they had customers that had work stopped because they couldn't complete the job because ICE had actually done a raid and taken employees. The very day that I was with one banker 2 weeks ago, he told me I just got a call from one of my customers, and they came back and picked up 18 employees. So needless to say, his work stopped right away. And the impact is that, so a builder, meanwhile, for the most part, they're the ones carrying a construction loan, paying the interest on that loan while they're trying to complete the work. And so if suddenly they're scrambling for employees, they're having to slow down or stop in many cases, that project's going to cost them a lot more. It's not going to get done as quickly as possible. And ultimately, frankly, also, the price goes up because now they're going to have to find ways, pay more, find people that can do it. And that ends up raising the cost of construction, which is another issue when we have an administration that talks about affordability. This is one thing that does not make a house less expensive when you don't have the people you need to build them.
And you have a consumer who's wanting this house built. Maybe it's their first home, second home, and can't get in it because perhaps the job isn't going to be completed. I know Congressman Cuellar had said that so many impact on every part of the building community. Something he told our reporter who was there on Monday was from the suppliers to the cement to the lumber to the builders and the contractors to the lenders to the workers. So you as the lender are seeing this financial ripple affecting here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Well, in our particular case, we close transactions. So if a job hasn't been done, well, we don't have anything to close. We're basically on hold, waiting hopefully for closing, and that construction loan becoming a mortgage and being taken out by a lender. And so the ripple effect is there. I mean, it's when you talk about the multiplier impact of an economic activity, and it's been well documented many times, and that's why people are always concerned about the housing industry, because it does impact so many different areas of our economy beyond the actual employees that work on the job, the purchasing of the property, the materials. People move into a house and they got to have furniture, they have to have appliances. A transaction closes, and that means that there's attorneys, real estate agents, title companies. It just goes on and on. So it's a real thing, and we're seeing it.
We're talking with Paul Rodriguez, who's president and CEO of Valley Land Title Company. We're going to continue our conversation in a minute. We're just going to take a short break. Stay right with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Border Report Live. I'm Sandra Sanchez, coming to you from Harlingen, Texas. At the top of the show, if you recall, we told you about ICE agents not using warrants to raise homes in search of undocumented migrants. This is an Associated Press story. The head of the local South Texas Builders Association tells us that agents are showing up at construction sites without warrants. He held this symposium earlier this week, and here's what he told us.
Unfortunately, what we're seeing nowadays is that our job sites are being raided with no actual warrants being shown. Both illegal and legal residents are being picked up at job sites, right? So we're having job sites that are being basically targeted when there's work being conducted, and when this work is being conducted, they take our labor, right? And there's, for instance, a concrete pour that maybe gets halfway done when they take the labor, and that's just adding so much cost, not just to the construction company, but also to the banks. So the fact that this is affecting our economy overall is the reason that we started raising a concern.
And joining us again is Paul Rodriguez, President and CEO of Valley Land Title Company, one of the largest title companies here in the Rio Grande Valley. Thanks for joining us, Paul. We were talking earlier about the financial implications. Certainly, Mr. Guerrero emphasized that on Monday. But, you're from here, born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. What's the emotional toll? I mean, how do you feel when you see that video of the concrete worker continuing to lay the concrete, even though ICE agents want to take him away? How do you feel about the threat to some of the communities here, your home?
Well, what really impacts me is the fact that living in the valley, for almost 3/4 of a century, we're used to seeing people work from both sides of the border. And that's been a fundamental part of the economy of the Valley. Back in the day, we were basically a giant farm. We were an agrarian economy. We were accustomed to having people coming from across the border to picking our crops, our citrus trees, year-round. And so that grew as things progressed and we progressed. And now we have an economy that's very diversified. Lots of great things are happening in South Texas. And that means a lot of buildings going on, a lot of construction is going on. People are looking for housing. People, there is still, and fortunately we have fundamentally an economy that's vibrant. We have people that need housing. And at the same time, we have people that need work from both sides of the border. And so this has been something that we've been accustomed to. We've always had people coming from both sides of the border without any hesitation, without any delays. And again, these are people that are trying to make a living, trying to take care of those at home, trying to make a better life for themselves. Unfortunately, there's a picture drawn many times that people that come across and they're illegal, they may be undocumented. I'll agree to that term. But the fact of the matter is they're just trying to make a living. And we've been accustomed to doing this for many years. And Senator, really, while we see the impact and we're talking about it in the construction area, I would point out in my mind, again, getting back to the agrarian issue, is if I remember correctly, when these things were first starting, these raids, a lot of them were on farmland, in particular, I think, in California. And there was a big hue and cry about that. And suddenly people said, oh, my God, how are we going to feed Americans if we can't harvest our crops? And suddenly that stopped. And I would point out that I don't see raids going along military highway of people that are working the fields. So I believe that the administration has made adjustments, for example, in the agricultural area. Well, frankly, it's the same thing in the construction area. So if it's done in one place, why can't they be more logical about the impact? And interestingly enough, there was a gentleman from Edwards Construction Company based out of El Paso. They're here now in the Valley building homes. They're an active builder. And he was pointing out that they don't have this problem in El Paso. Yes, they have raids. They have people come on their premises, but they are looking for a specific individual, a specific person that's violated the law, that has a record, and they go in, hopefully they find them, they take them out, and that's it. That's not what's going on. They're going on and really looking and saying, all right, is this person a U.S. citizen or not? Prove to me that you are. And you are there in the middle of trying to frame a house, build a hole, whatever you're trying to do. So there's some major inconsistencies. And I would also point out that, like I said, they gave some slack on the agricultural side. But remember, besides construction, we have a lot of people in hotel services, restaurants, landscaping companies that rely on the same type of employee.
Let me ask you, the Trump administration says that they're going after criminals. That includes those with deportation orders. Do you think that's true, or do you think that they're just casting a wider net? Do you think what they're doing is fair? You mentioned changing the dynamics, what they did with the agriculture industry. How are they treating the construction industry? Are all those people assumed to be criminals that they're going after?
They seem to be casting as wide a net as possible, and that net has a lot of holes in it.
I know that you're not, well, you are an elected official representing the school district industry, but I wanted to ask you, Congressman Cuellar said in that earlier clip he wanted bipartisan solutions. If you were able to solve this, do you have any ideas of what you would change and how you would make it better?
Obviously, we need immigration reform. I think there have been some decent proposals made in prior sessions of Congress, and one in particular was bipartisan. There was a path to help people, for example, DACA students and others. The point is that, though, is not going to happen overnight. I completely understand and accept the fact that we do have a problem, and it's going to take some time to fix it in a proper way, in a fair way. I think it can be done. If we're willing to work across the aisle and look at the impact that's happening on human beings in South Texas and other parts of the country. But the point is, at the moment, the immediate need is for basically ICE to back off these random raids that are just trying to bring in, it seems to me, numbers and not necessarily fulfilling what the administration had previously said, and that was about going after criminals.
Now, I mentioned that you are an elected official. Let me go back to that. You're a board trustee for South Texas College, and you're currently chairman of the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. So a lot of the institutions that you represent offer trade services, schooling, education. Have you heard any complaints from students or fears from students about entering the construction industry or these trades because of what's happening?
Not specifically. We're working in particular on apprenticeship programs with our builders. We're trying to do everything we can. And in fact, at the very first town hall meeting they had, we reminded the builders that we are always looking to help people in those types of works. Those are careers. We have people and programs at the college that focus on HVAC, on plumbing, and electrical work, and others. We even have a program that deals with job supervisors. And so there are definitely opportunities, and there are ways that the educational system can help. And we are already, even at the high school level, producing welders and other people in those trades.
All right. Well, Paul Rodriguez, CEO and president of Valley Land Title, thank you so much for joining us today. Stick with us. Border Report Live. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Border Report Live. I'm Sandra Sanchez, coming to you from South Texas, but wanted to tell you about some really interesting new technology that is being installed in West Texas. U.S. Border Patrol has added a non-lethal barrier to prevent smugglers and other offenders from speeding past a checkpoint on Interstate 10 in West Texas. It's a high-tech combination of ground spikes that can puncture tires and a net designed to absorb the momentum of a disabled vehicle. The agency deployed the system earlier this week at the Sierra Blanca, Texas highway checkpoint. That's east of El Paso. The Big Bend sector chief said the system allows agents to stop and contain those threats before they become dangerous pursuits on public roadways. Border Report in the past few years has tracked several cases in which drug and migrant smugglers speed past highway checkpoints in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Those often lead to pursuits, and some of those pursuits can end in wrecked vehicles. We've seen several of that here in Brooks County. Also now to Southern California, where tens of thousands of dead fish have washed ashore in Lake in Tijuana in recent weeks. And these fish have been gathered and buried in a giant hole by city crews. As our Salvador Rivera tells us from Southern California, visitors to the lake began noticing a lot of dead fish and a very foul smell.
This phenomenon began about 3 weeks ago when tiny fish called Maya sardines began washing ashore dead. An investigation determined that the reason for the fish die-off has nothing to do with the water.
This is the lake that sits behind Rodriguez Dam in Tijuana. It is used primarily for flood control and is the largest storage for water in the city. It is also a recreational area for residents south of the border. About 3 weeks ago, visitors started noticing dead fish washing ashore.
Locally, we call them little sardines.
Salvador Cervantes is with Baja California's Civil Protection, one of the agencies called in to investigate why large amounts of these sardines were dying off.
We began gathering a series of data, doing required studies to determine what was happening.
According to Cervantes, the fish were killed by what's called thermal rollover, which occurs when there are sudden swings in temperatures and weather conditions, diminishing oxygen levels in the water.
Let's remember, we first had a wave of storms followed by dry Santa Ana winds. This generated a big change in temperatures, humidity, and wind conditions. This allowed the water to produce less oxygen at the depth where the fish live.
Cervantes says there were no foreign substances or materials found in their studies, nor some type of additional algae.
There is no evidence of another factor involved. No other species were affected, including birds or other fish found behind the dam. The only species impacted was the sardines.
Crews have collected the dead fish and have buried tens of thousands of these sardines in a giant hole at the lake. Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
And that'll do it for us today. Be sure to read all of our stories on borderreport.com. You can also find us on YouTube. From South Texas, I'm Sandra Sanchez. Thank you and goodbye.